Well, if today's testimony is true, Chad Daybell's bizarre ideologies are becoming a textbook example of how cult leaders cherry pick passages from religious text in order to support their predatory preferences, all the while compelling their followers to fall in line. Let's look at how Daybell twisted the idea of reincarnation in order to justify infidelity and murder. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil in this edition after today's trial in the Chad Daybell murder case up in Idaho. This is a triple murder for the deaths of JJ Vallow, Tylee Ryan, and Tammy Daybell. Now, I hope you're going to take time to hit the like and subscribe button. And please ring the bell and please consider supporting us because it's the only way we're able to keep Profiling Evil going. You know, reincarnation is not a concept typically embraced within mainstream Christianity. It's more commonly associated with Eastern religions like Hinduism or Buddhism. However, there are fringe groups, and this is an example, and individuals, quite frankly, like Chad Daybell, who blend Christian beliefs with elements of Eastern spirituality or these New Age philosophies. And they might do it in an attempt to reconcile the concept of reincarnation within their Christian teachings. When you get groups like Chad and Lori Daybell's Church of the Firstborn, people who build their own special version of the topic, they use these kinds of perversions to justify, in this case, their adulterous relationships and apparently murder. Now, in my opinion, the Daybells are claiming that their God is forgiving any of the transgressions that they're making because they already lived more than 1,000 years ago. They've already been judged, so they could do anything they want, and it didn't matter in the eyes of the God that they believed in. Now, I hope you're catching the fact that I'm saying the God that they believe in, because I don't believe it's the God that I believe in, frankly, and I don't think it's the one you believe in. Now, here we are, getting this story from Chad and Lori that they're just back here on Earth with all the rest of us galumps to do a little do-over. And of course, to gather together 144,000 other like-minded people to take the world through the next apocalypse. That alone is kind of frightening that they might have 144,000 like-minded people like these two. Anyway, I want to make it really clear that after studying this subject on reincarnation, their interpretation is deviating significantly from Orthodox Christian doctrines. And I think this is important to point out because Christian doctrine emphasizes things like moral purity, fidelity, repentance for sins that are committed in this life, including murder and, of course, adulterous affairs. And all of this is with the understanding that each person in mainstream Christianity, and I believe many other faiths, that we have one life, one opportunity for salvation. Now, Chad and Lori Daybell, everything keeps focusing on the Latter-day Saint faith. And Latter-day Saint doctrine is no exception to this. In fact, I went over to their website, and the Latter-day Saint Church does not believe or promote in any way the idea of reincarnation. In my opinion, justifying affairs and murders through the lens of reincarnation is likely to be met with skepticism and condemnation from, I even think, their God, I think our God, and more importantly, and not taking away from the Christian world, but more importantly for this discussion, I think it's going to be met with deep and heavy condemnation from the jury that's now considering Chad Daybell's fate. Now, Chad and Lori Daybell aren't Hindu and they're not Buddhist, yet they took an ideology, the practiced again in the Eastern world, They took this ideology and they twisted it to justify their ongoing affair, and it's looking like to me that it was also used to justify murder. This is a tactic that I have seen used by cult leaders over and again in almost every cult that I've looked at. And I've looked at a batch of them. They pervert mainstream beliefs in order to fit the story that they're trying to sell. And boy, oh boy, were they trying to sell a story. And can you believe how many people were buying off on this thing? That's the part that's most frightening to me. Well, I spent some time on Court TV recapping this day of testimony, and I was asked by Vinnie Politan about my thoughts around this idea of Chad Daybell disciplining JJ Vallow just before his death. Now, you might be surprised by my thoughts, and I hope that you'll comment on those when we get to the end, especially my thoughts on why Chad likely had a relationship with JJ, and that's why he was able to take him upstairs for a timeout. I disagree a little bit with my co-panelists, but I think they might be right on target and I might be off target. But I really think this proves that Chad Daybell had a relationship with JJ and Tylee long before, which is something that they're going to have a tough time arguing he didn't know who they were. Let's watch this.
And in Salt Lake City, religious cult expert, retired police commander, host of Profiling Evil, and author of the book Deceived, Mike King is with us. Great to see everyone. Lauren, your thoughts about the interaction here between Chad Daybell and the kids, JJ, Tylee. I'm not sure if he ever met Tylee. He may have on one of those 3 trips to Phoenix.
I'm not sure if he ever met Tylee in Phoenix, but he certainly, I believe, met her before she was murdered. And then as far as that scratch on JJ's neck, I would just like to ask how a 7-year-old boy is able to scratch the neck of a man who's 6'3" tall. It's a very upsetting story to hear that Chad and JJ were alone upstairs. Allegedly, he was disciplining him, and he comes back injured on his neck. You can only imagine the worst, and who knows what these children went through before they were even murdered. But whether or not Tylee met Chad at an event at Lori's home, she certainly had meetings at her home as well in Mesa, Arizona, when Charles was out of town and Chad was actually spending the night with other people at her home for these religious conferences. So it wouldn't be beyond scope, to use a legal term here, that Tylee started to get to know who Chad was without knowing all the details.
Now, the other thing, Mike, when you think about this dynamic, we're talking about Chad disciplining Lori's child while he's still married to another woman with his own family.
Yeah, Vinny, I think the thing that I really get out of all of this, I'm not as concerned that there was a scratch on Chad's neck. If we look at the camp that JJ may have been really unhappy and squirming and fighting, maybe with somebody that he wasn't familiar with. If you take Chad's story that he didn't really know this child very well, or it may be completely on the flip side, that he knew him well enough that he actually could take him upstairs and discipline him, give him a little bit of time out while there were guests in the home, and then getting him settled down, coming down and saying, look, you're going to go down and you're going to behave, and JJ giving in like children do. But it doesn't take away from a temper tantrum, or it could absolutely be that this child was trying to defend himself and fight for his own safety at that very moment. So the thing that I get out of all of this, with all my ramblings, Vinny, is that he had to have had a good relationship with JJ in order to be the one that would take him upstairs to get him in a little timeout and settle him down. And I don't believe if it was the first time he'd ever met him that would have ever happened.
I agree. Dr. Carol Lieberman, this dynamic is bizarre, but we're in the midst of this whole Doomsday Bell saga, so everything here is out of the norm. But for this little child, this had to be really frightened. Like his whole world is turned upside down. I mean, he already had a tough life as a young child, was adopted by Charles and by Lori, and then Charles is gone, and then he's ripped up and moved out to the middle of nowhere in Idaho where he doesn't know anyone, and now this stranger or this man that he just met is disciplining him.
Well, you know, of course, we know that JJ was autistic and got into these, had these sort of temper tantrums or out of control tantrums. I don't know that that means that there was something sort of inappropriate that went on, salacious that went on between JJ and Chad. But, you know, here he is. No little boy, it's hard for him to understand why another man would be coming into the house. And children, especially autistic children, are very sensitive to feelings that are going on. And so he might well have experienced, you know, not that he could describe it necessarily, but he could have well have felt that that Chad represented a threat, and that Chad, you know, liked his mother, and so I don't think, you know, the thing is that Chad really, I don't think that he was made much effort to try to connect to either of the children to whatever extent that he was with them, because that wasn't what he was interested in. He just cared about Lori and about their time together. And, you know, only to the extent that maybe making nice to the kids would make her like him more. But I don't think he was, you know, he wasn't a warm fuzzy.
No, I would not. That's one word I would not use to describe, or two words I would not use to describe Chad Daybell.
Well, we then spoke about my thoughts on how the entire case is coming together. And I shared how much I like these kinds of cases where they, you know, we have a body, but they become circumstantial in nature. That means that multiple things are involved. Now, remember, circumstantial is one of the forms of evidence, but circumstantial is really that combination of the other forms of evidence that say something in fact happened. In this case, there's eyewitness accounts. There's forensic and physical evidence. Heck, there's even admissions, although there are confessions to speak of. There are bodies that have been recovered, and there's an incredible amount of criminal behavior that's exhibited in this case. And I think that's really important in tying it all together. So let's watch my comments on that part.
Do you recall if Lori ever said anything to you in relation to Tylee and whether or not what her level was or her rating?
She did say she was dark at some point. I don't remember the rating.
Do you know who gave her that information?
I'm guessing it was Chad. I don't remember.
Generally speaking, would she tell you she turned to Chad for these answers?
Yeah.
Did Lori talk to you about JJ while you were there?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
She told me that the day before I arrived that he became dark.
So previously she'd told you Tylee was dark.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now JJ was dark.
Correct.
Did you observe JJ that weekend?
Yes.
Did you observe any behaviors that caused you concern?
No.
This lightness and darkness, Mike King, I want to start with you because, you know, you're supposed to naturally die, right? Naturally. These aren't natural deaths that we're talking about. We're talking about a gunshot to kill Charles Vallow. We're talking about Tylee's remains in the pet cemetery. What are your thoughts here about how this is being sold and who's doing the selling?
It's feeling more and more like not only deep planning and premeditation, but a scheme is coming together. We're seeing the means, motive, and opportunity, Vinny, the things that we talk about. If we looked at this case purely from a circumstantial perspective, we see, and we've had testimony that Chad Daybell is the one determining who's light and dark. That's very significant in my opinion. And whether Lori becomes the middleman to Alex Cox or they're all in this together, that every time somebody is, or not every time, most times when someone's channeled and determined to be dark, Charles Vallow, Tammy Daybell, JJ Vallow, Tylee Ryan, Alex Cox, they die. And so as we start putting the pieces together, it's pretty darn easy to start saying, hey, somebody's making the determination that these people are dark, and dark people somehow become the subject of castings like we talked about a few nights ago. And those castings determine that a spirit has to be extruded or exorcised from the body. And the only thing that can happen, according to Melanie Gibb, is that once that spirit is out of the body, the evil spirit, that the body's got to die. And so we see this whole plan coming together. And then that doesn't even begin to mention the windfall from a financial perspective.
Well, that's what I'm going to talk about that, right?
So what are your thoughts on this one, folks? Do you think today's testimony moved the needle one way or another for you? I'd like to know how you'd vote if you were sitting on the jury today. And I hope you'll take time to put your comments down below and share with others your thoughts. Be kind to each other. This isn't a time to bash each other. It's not a time to bash theologies. It's not a time to bash people who try to do things a certain way. It's a time to just share and learn together. So I hope you'll put your comments down below, and I hope that you'll subscribe to Profiling Evil, if you haven't already at least. And please share us with your friends. And don't forget that if you like audio podcasts, you can find Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. I hope you'll go over there and catch that as well. In fact, in the next week, I'm going to be bundling up a couple of these little recaps on Chad Daybell into a single podcast just to kind of cover a couple of key topics like reincarnation or castings or blessings. Hey, don't forget about CrimeCon in Nashville at the end of May. If you've been thinking about going, make sure that you're taking advantage of this special discount code that I have on the screen. The code is Profiling Evil, one word. And if you use Profiling Evil in that registration process, you'll get a nice discount and we'll get a chance to see each other. And please, take advantage of ordering some of the merchandise that we released yesterday. It supports our channel, and it's the only way that I'm able to keep Profiling Evil going. The only way it happens is through revenue from YouTube and through your donations. And folks, just know that we use this money to help others, and we don't put it into our own pocket. Cover expenses, but we try to have some fun with it and do the right thing by helping in other criminal investigations. You can support us by ordering this special merchandise package. It's 4 drink coasters. They have the Profiling Evil logo on them. You get 4 Profiling Evil stickers, and you get a Profiling Evil pen. I mean, how could you go wrong? And it's all shipped for free in part of the price anywhere in the United States for a total price of $20. So I hope you'll hit that QR code or grab the link down below and you'll consider supporting us. Hey, thanks again, and we'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.